Have you ever trusted someone so deeply you'd never imagine they'd betray you? Well, that was me, until one simple text message changed my entire life. My family told me our long-awaited trip was canceled due to financial issues. I believed them, comforting myself that we'd reschedule soon. But just days later, I discovered pictures of my family laughing, smiling, and enjoying that very vacation without me. In that moment, everything I'd quietly endured suddenly became crystal clear. I had always been invisible, overlooked, quietly accepting whatever scraps of affection they tossed my way. But this time, instead of staying silent, I decided to do something no one expected. I finally spoke my truth. What happened next not only shocked my family, but it set me free in ways I never imagined possible. This is my story about betrayal, courage, and ultimately finding myself. Stay until the end, because sometimes the truth changes absolutely everything. Subscribe now for more empowering stories of self-discovery, family dynamics, and personal growth. Don't forget to like and share this video to inspire others on their own healing journey. I never thought a single text message could shatter everything I'd built my hopes around. It had been years since my family last took a vacation together, the kind where everyone crowded into a minivan, fighting over snacks, playlists, and legroom, yet somehow ending up with memories we'd cherish for decades. At 35, single, and buried in a career as a therapist, I'd become the glue holding my family together, always fixing arguments, smoothing over conflicts, and silently absorbing everyone's frustrations. Ironically, I was better at navigating others' emotions than my own. Maybe that was why I'd allowed myself to believe that, this time, things would be different. For months, I had carefully planned this family trip to the beach. I'd pictured it all vividly. My father grumbling playfully about sunscreen, my mother meticulously packing sandwiches we'd never finish, my sister Lauren snapping endless selfies with exaggerated poses, and my younger brother Alex debating every minor detail like he was preparing for a presidential debate. It was chaotic, predictable, comforting. It felt like home. Every evening after work, I spent hours scrolling through Airbnb listings, comparing prices, reading reviews, and finally choosing the perfect beachfront cottage that I knew everyone would love. It was slightly out of budget, but I'd saved diligently, skipping lunches, canceling streaming services, even holding off on much-needed car repairs. Each sacrifice felt justified, tiny stitches carefully binding my scattered family back together. So when my phone buzzed that afternoon at work, the familiar name Mom illuminating the screen, I expected a cheerful update or maybe a casual check-in. Instead, it was a single, blunt line of text. "Honey, we'll have to postpone the trip to next year. Money's tight right now. Hope you understand." I sat motionless at my desk, staring blankly at those words, allowing them to slowly sink into my consciousness. Initially, my therapist's brain kicked in, rationalizing her message instantly. Of course, money was tight. Things had been rough lately. Dad's business had slowed. Lauren had mentioned some unexpected expenses. It was completely understandable, I reasoned. There was nothing to be upset about. My mother was just being practical, responsible. But despite my carefully constructed logic, a faint ache of disappointment pulsed somewhere deep within me. I shook my head, mentally scolding myself. This wasn't about me after all. It was about them. It was always about them. Still, I couldn't help but type a hesitant reply. "Sure thing, Mom. Let me know if there's anything I can help with. Love you." The words felt hollow even as I sent them, robotic and dutiful, not reflecting my sinking heart. I slipped my phone into my pocket and returned to my paperwork, pushing aside any lingering discomfort. I'd become adept at compartmentalizing these small betrayals, swallowing them down silently, pretending they didn't sting. But this time, it felt different, heavier. I didn't yet realize why, but looking back, maybe my subconscious knew before I did. That evening at home, silence echoed louder than usual in my small apartment. My neatly packed suitcase sat mockingly in the corner, a cruel reminder of plans made too earnestly. I sipped lukewarm tea at my kitchen table, flipping mindlessly through channels, searching for distraction. But the unease lingered stubbornly, refusing to be silenced. A nagging feeling pushed me to reach for my phone again, mindlessly opening social media. The familiar routine scroll, pause, scroll was meant to soothe. But tonight, the algorithm delivered a cruelty disguised as coincidence. Right at the top of my newsfeed, Lauren's latest post stared back at me. Living our best lives! Family vacay officially started. My breath caught sharply, eyes fixed on the brightly lit photo. My family: mom, dad, Lauren, Alex smiling broadly, sunglasses perched stylishly, beach stretching endlessly behind them. I zoomed in, heart racing, eyes frantically searching for some mistake, some logical explanation, but the timestamp was clear, posted just 2 hours ago. They hadn't postponed the trip at all. They had simply gone without me. The cold realization pierced deep, brutal, and unrelenting. I dropped my phone onto the table with trembling fingers. The sound echoed emptily, bouncing off bare walls. This wasn't just disappointing. It was intentional exclusion. It was betrayal. A heavy numbness settled over me, but somewhere beneath it, anger quietly stirred softly at first, cautious, unfamiliar, but undeniably present. My heart thudded unevenly as the enormity of this act sank in. My family, the people I'd spent years silently sacrificing for, had deliberately left me behind. For a long time, I sat alone in that dimly lit kitchen, trying to piece together how this had happened, questioning how I'd become so invisible. Had I misunderstood my role all these years? Had I unknowingly conditioned them to take me for granted, assuming I'd always quietly accept being forgotten? The answers didn't come easily, but I knew one thing clearly: this betrayal would change everything, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to ignore it. In the days following that crushing text, I tried to keep busy burying myself in client notes, sessions, and evening walks that stretched aimlessly through neighborhood streets. I told myself repeatedly it wasn't personal, that money was tight, and my parents had no choice. Even with my careful rationalizations, however, my heart stubbornly refused to let go of the ache. Yet nothing had prepared me for the blunt force of reality that was about to strike. It happened casually, almost cruelly ordinary, a few nights later. I'd finally managed to push my lingering disappointment aside, enough to settle onto the sofa. A bowl of reheated pasta balanced carelessly on my lap. I scrolled absent-mindedly through social media, the flickering screen offering mindless comfort. Then suddenly, Lauren's smiling face appeared again. Brightly lit, tanned, hair tousled by a sea breeze. A slideshow, no less. Each swipe revealing my parents, Alex and Lauren herself, posed dramatically on a beach I knew intimately. The caption beneath was almost painfully cheerful. Another day in paradise. Family bonding time, much needed. My fork slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the ceramic bowl, sending pasta sauce splattering lightly onto my blouse. But I hardly noticed. Eyes fixed numbly on the screen. Time seemed to stretch thin around me, the room suddenly suffocatingly quiet. It wasn't a misunderstanding or a simple postponement. It was deliberate exclusion. The realization hit like a physical blow, sharp and sudden, stealing my breath. My own family, whom I had protected, defended, mediated for, had left me behind without a second thought. They had lied. Numbly, my fingers swiped through image after image. Dad grinning broadly, holding a half-eaten sandwich. Mom laughing freely, a rare, radiant expression I'd rarely seen lately. Alex with sunglasses perched atop his head, mugging playfully for Lauren's camera. Together, without me, they'd never looked happier. A cold sensation slowly crept through my veins, pooling heavily in my stomach. Hurt shifted gradually to anger, burning slow and steady. It wasn't just betrayal. It was blatant disregard for my feelings. A dismissive assumption that I would quietly accept whatever treatment they handed down. Before the anger fully settled, however, came a desperate, irrational hope. Maybe there'd been a misunderstanding. Maybe they thought I had canceled myself. My rational brain knew better, but emotions aren't rational, especially when you're drowning in confusion and rejection. Unable to help myself, I picked up my phone, fingers trembling as I dialed Lauren's number. The call rang once, twice, 3 times before going to voicemail. Swallowing hard, I texted, "Lauren, I just saw your photos. What's going on?" Mom said the trip was canceled. The wait was excruciating, a silence heavier than the one in my apartment. A few minutes later, Lauren's reply buzzed back, brief and coldly casual. "Oh, Mom said you couldn't make it because you were too busy. Sorry, sis, thought you knew." I stared blankly at the screen. Too busy? The very reason I'd been saving, planning, adjusting schedules was precisely to ensure I could make time. The simplicity of Lauren's casual dismissal wounded more deeply than my parents' initial lie. The family hadn't even considered my feelings important enough to communicate clearly. They had simply decided for me. Something deep inside me shifted in that moment, a breaking point I'd never reached before. My entire life, I'd played peacekeeper, mediator, the silent fixer. Now, confronted with stark, indisputable evidence of my own invisibility, the realization became glaringly obvious. The family I thought needed me didn't seem to notice my absence at all. Anger burned hot, mixing dangerously with tears I refused to shed. My hand shook as I placed the phone face down on the coffee table, as if physically blocking further pain from reaching me. I sat unmoving, darkness settling around me as evening faded into night, thoughts spinning relentlessly. Every memory I'd rationalized, every instance of being overlooked, rushed back with sharp clarity. Suddenly, I could see it all clearly. Every overlooked birthday, each forgotten invitation, every small ignored desire moments I'd brushed off as insignificant now revealed a cruel pattern. I had conditioned my family to expect my silence, my forgiveness, my quiet acceptance. And they had conditioned me into believing my worth was tied directly to how much I could quietly endure. But tonight, clarity came with pain. I no longer wanted to endure. For the first time, the cost of silence felt impossibly high. Slowly I stood, the half-empty bowl forgotten beside me. Turning off the lights, I moved toward my bedroom, my body suddenly exhausted. Yet even as fatigue weighed heavily upon me, sleep seemed distant, elusive. That night, lying awake in bed, I promised myself one thing clearly, fiercely. This would be the last time anyone, even my family, made me feel invisible. It had to end here. Sleep evaded me entirely that night. I lay in bed, tangled beneath sheets that felt heavier with each passing hour. My mind replaying every moment of exclusion, every subtle dismissal I'd experienced from my family over the years. Moments I'd willingly brushed aside now resurfaced, sharper and more vivid than ever before. I recalled my 29th birthday. My family had promised dinner at my favorite restaurant, something simple yet deeply meaningful to me. I'd arrived early, excitement thrumming in my veins, waiting patiently as time ticked by. 10 minutes, 20, 40, eventually I'd called my mother. Her voice had been calm, almost bored. "Oh, honey, something came up at your sister's. She's having a rough day. Can we reschedule?" And I, ever compliant, had whispered quietly, "Sure, Mom," and spent that birthday eating alone, pretending not to feel wounded. As dawn crept through my window, I understood now painfully clear that my compliance, my silence, had trained them to treat me as an afterthought. They hadn't intended cruelty, rather, they'd simply learned to overlook me, because I'd taught them I'd quietly accept it. But not this time. Something had shifted fundamentally within me, and I couldn't reverse it. The quiet resignation that had always cushioned their neglect had vanished, replaced by a fierce desire for acknowledgement, for respect. Work was nearly impossible the next day. Sitting in my office, trying to listen to clients share their struggles, felt hypocritical. My usually calm demeanor cracked. My focus slipped continuously. Mid-afternoon, I finally closed my office door and let myself breathe deeply, trying to regain my composure. I scrolled again through the vacation photos Lauren had posted. The cheerful, carefree images mocked me, deepening the ache in my chest. My finger paused over the call button again, this time hovering over my mother's number. Before my rational brain could object, I tapped. "Hello," my mother answered, voice bright, breezy vacation tone intact. Waves lapped in the background, the sound triggering fresh hurt. "Mom," I began, throat tightening. I fought to keep my voice steady. "What's going on? You said the trip was postponed." Silence followed, a stunned, guilty silence that stretched painfully. I held my breath, heart hammering unevenly. "Oh, Alina," she finally responded, sighing deeply, clearly uncomfortable. "I just thought, well, you seem busy and Lauren needed the trip so badly. You always understand." Her words were careful yet strikingly dismissive. My grip tightened around the phone. "You lied to me," I said softly. "It wasn't an accusation, it was a statement of fact." She hesitated again, audibly searching for justification. "I didn't mean it like that. It just seemed easier. You always have so much going on. I didn't think you'd even notice. You wouldn't notice." Those words hung between us, heavy and merciless, cutting straight into the heart of our relationship. My eyes stung, but anger tempered my tears. You didn't think I'd notice? I echoed bitterly, voice shaking. Mom, I planned this trip. I saved up, took time off work, everything. How could you think I wouldn't care? Oh, Alina, please don't dramatize this, she said, irritation slipping into her tone. We'll make it up to you. I closed my eyes, recognizing her familiar attempt to deflect responsibility, but something inside me refused to let it slide, refused to soothe her guilt. No, I said quietly, firmly. This isn't something you can just make up. You deliberately excluded me. You lied to me. And for what? Convenience? To avoid an awkward conversation? She didn't answer immediately. Her silence spoke volumes. Eventually, she murmured softly, We'll talk about this when we get home. You're making too big a deal out of this, Alina. I'm disappointed. Before I could reply, the line disconnected abruptly. My mother, expert at avoidance, had shut me down once more, leaving me alone with unresolved hurt. But this time, her dismissal felt different, less like a mere oversight, more like a deliberate choice to silence me again. My pulse raced with frustration. My mother's response crystallized everything I'd feared. Even now, faced directly with my pain, she preferred comfort over confrontation. But for the first time, I refused to swallow my emotions. This betrayal was too deep, too blatant. There was no hiding from it, no quiet forgiveness available. Sitting in the empty silence of my office, I made a decision perhaps rash, certainly unprecedented. Picking up my phone again, I booked myself a solo trip. My fingers trembled, my heart pounded, but beneath the fear lay a newfound determination. It was impulsive, slightly reckless, but it felt incredibly right. I wouldn't wait for them to return, begging for acknowledgement. I would leave. For once, I would put myself first. For years, I'd silently begged my family to notice me, to value me. But now, clarity sharpened painfully, wonderfully. The only validation I truly needed was my own. 2 weeks later, the day after my family returned from their blissful, exclusive vacation, I stood in front of my parents' familiar front door, hesitating before knocking. My stomach twisted painfully, nerves coiling around my resolve, nearly choking it. Yet beneath the anxiety, I felt an undeniable strength, a quiet, unfamiliar voice whispering firmly, You deserve better than this. I had rehearsed my words endlessly, calm, controlled explanations of exactly how they'd made me feel. But as the door opened to reveal my mother's startled face, the carefully planned script evaporated instantly. Alina tsai, Mom said, eyes flickering with surprise. Behind her cautious smile lay discomfort. I knew my presence made her uneasy, and I found myself unwilling to ease her conscience this time. Can I come in? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Of course, she stepped back, her eyes avoiding mine. Inside, the living room buzzed with familiar chatter. My father sat absorbed by the television. Lauren sprawled casually across the sofa, Alex texting rapidly beside her. All fell silent the moment I entered, eyes shifting nervously toward me. Alina, Dad offered stiffly, muting the TV. His discomfort was palpable. Lauren stared, cautious, guarded, while Alex awkwardly tucked his phone away. I took a deep breath, holding their gazes steadily. I think we need to talk about what happened. The tension thickened immediately. Lauren shifted uncomfortably. Dad cleared his throat roughly, eyes trained downward. My mother hovered nervously, fingers twisting anxiously together. Finally, Lauren sighed impatiently. Look, Alina, it wasn't some big conspiracy. We just assumed you were busy. We didn't think. You didn't think, I interrupted quietly but firmly. That's exactly the problem. My voice, calm yet resolute, silenced her immediately. My family was not used to me standing my ground, especially so assertively. They exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly unprepared for this confrontation. Mom, I turned slowly toward her, steadying my voice carefully. You told me we postponed the trip because of money. Then I saw pictures of everyone together. Do you have any idea how that felt? Her eyes widened slightly, voice defensive. Honey, I told you it seemed easier. For who? I asked quietly, gently. Certainly not easier for me. My father shifted awkwardly, clearly uncomfortable. Alina, I think you're overreacting a bit, he began gruffly. We just assumed you'd understand. That's exactly the issue, Dad, I countered, voice shaking slightly. You always assume I'll understand, that I'll quietly accept anything you decide. Do you realize how often you do this? Lauren rolled her eyes dramatically, exhaling loudly. Here we go again. Can we not make this into some big emotional thing? My patience wore thin, but I steadied myself. Why is it so inconvenient for you when I express my feelings, Lauren? Is it because it forces you to face your selfishness? She stared at me, clearly taken aback. Her silence was as revealing as words could ever be. Alina, my mother tried again, softer, guilt slipping into her voice now. We're sorry, okay, but it's done. Can't we just move past this? Move past it? I echoed incredulously. Without acknowledging how deeply you hurt me? Without even a sincere apology? No one responded immediately. The weight of my words filled the space between us, demanding acknowledgement. Yet, instead of taking responsibility, my family fell silent, eyes averted, unwilling or unable to admit fault openly. It struck me then, painfully clear, that they'd never had to face consequences for their behavior. They'd always counted on my quiet forgiveness, relying on my willingness to swallow pain to preserve harmony. This moment, this confrontation, was alien territory for them, uncomfortable precisely because I'd chosen to break the pattern. I don't want your excuses, I finally said, voice quiet but unwavering. I just wanted you to understand how it felt, even briefly, to be forgotten by the people you love most. My mother looked genuinely stricken, mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again. Lauren scowled, but her eyes softened slightly. Dad rubbed his temple, eyes troubled. Alex, typically aloof, stared at his shoes. I knew then, I saw clearly in their uneasy glances, that despite their reluctance to admit openly, something had shifted. They'd finally felt the uncomfortable sting of accountability, even if briefly. I turned toward the door, pausing for a moment before speaking again, quietly but with certainty. I've spent my entire life quietly absorbing your neglect. That stops today. If you can't respect me enough to treat me fairly, I'll find respect elsewhere, starting with myself. Alina, my mother began softly, regret slipping clearly into her voice. I held up my hand gently, stopping her mid-sentence. Not today, Mom. Not now. Before anyone could respond, I left the house, closing the door gently behind me. Stepping onto the porch, I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with crisp evening air, feeling strangely light-liberated even amidst lingering pain. Walking toward my car, I realized this confrontation had changed everything. I'd taken a stand, broken a lifelong cycle, and begun reclaiming my voice. It terrified me, but also exhilarated me, filling my chest with a tentative, unfamiliar sense of strength. As I drove home, windows down, cool breeze brushing my face, I wondered quietly, what if I'd done this sooner? What if standing up for myself could have always felt this freeing? I didn't know exactly what came next, but one thing was abundantly clear. I couldn't go back to silence, to invisibility, no matter the cost. I was finally ready to be heard. In the days following that confrontation, my world felt different, brighter, yet unfamiliar, as if I'd stepped into a new reality that I wasn't yet fully comfortable occupying. I'd shattered my family's comfortable illusion of my quiet acceptance, and in doing so had irreversibly shifted something deep within myself. Initially, anxiety bubbled constantly beneath the surface. Every time my phone buzzed or chimed, I tensed, bracing for angry texts or guilt-inducing calls from my mother, Lauren, or even Dad. Yet surprisingly, my phone remained silent. Their silence, though unsettling, allowed me space to consider my next step carefully. My impulsive decision to book a solo trip to the coast now became both a lifeline and a source of dread. 2 weeks after booking, the departure date approached rapidly, magnifying the reality of my choice. On the eve of my trip, I sat alone in my bedroom, suitcase open on my bed, a chaotic pile of clothes scattered across the sheets. My chest tightened with hesitation. I'd never traveled alone before. What if I got lonely? What if I hated it? My rational mind conjured endless reasons to cancel. But beneath the anxiety stirred something stronger, deeper. A quiet, determined voice reminding me gently, this trip wasn't merely a vacation. It was a declaration to myself of independence, of my right to happiness without permission. The next morning, with my suitcase packed and heart fluttering nervously, I stepped into the bustling airport, feeling vulnerable yet strangely invigorated. The busy hum of travelers around me, families juggling luggage, couples laughing easily, sharply highlighted my solitude. But instead of pain, I felt a subtle relief, a gentle acknowledgement of my freedom. Arriving at the seaside cottage I'd chosen, I felt a pang of irony. It was exactly the kind of place I'd originally envisioned sharing with my family, rustic yet comfortable, with wooden decks overlooking the endless ocean. Alone now, this space belonged solely to me, its silence simultaneously comforting and confronting. The first evening, I walked slowly along the beach, sand cool beneath my bare feet. The rhythmic crashing of waves echoed softly in my ears, matching the quiet rhythm of my heartbeat. As I sat down, the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky shades of soft orange and delicate pink, colors I'd barely noticed in years past. For the first time, without the constant noise of my family's expectations and demands, I felt fully present. Breathing deeply, eyes closed, I let the salty breeze wrap gently around me, whispering a sense of tranquility I hadn't realized I desperately craved. Days unfolded leisurely, punctuated by solitary explorations, long walks along winding coastal paths, and conversations with strangers, something I'd rarely done before. At a small cafe near the shore, I met Isabella, an older woman with soft gray curls and eyes that sparkled with genuine warmth. Our conversation began casually, but before I realized, it had drifted into deeper waters. "You seem thoughtful," she remarked softly, over her steaming mug of tea, eyes carefully studying my face. I smiled hesitantly, surprised by my openness. "I'm still figuring out how to enjoy being alone, I guess." She nodded knowingly, her gentle expression inviting trust. "Solitude can feel daunting at first," Isabella said gently, "but it can teach us everything we truly need to learn about ourselves. Most people fear silence precisely because it speaks the loudest truth." Her words resonated deeply. For so long, my own silence had hidden truths I'd been unwilling or afraid to face, the truth that I'd conditioned my family to overlook me, and worse, conditioned myself to accept it. "Maybe I'm finally learning to listen," I admitted quietly, feeling the sincerity behind my own words. Isabella smiled warmly. "Then you're already braver than you realize." That night, sitting alone again on the cottage deck, staring out at the moonlit ocean, I allowed Isabella's words to settle into my consciousness. I'd spent so many years molding myself around others' expectations, desperate for their approval, afraid of rejection. But now, facing the raw honesty of my solitude, I felt a powerful, almost overwhelming realization. I no longer needed anyone's approval to exist. My worth wasn't measured by how much I could sacrifice for others, but by how honestly I could live for myself. In that moment, clarity settled gently over my heart, easing the weight I'd carried for decades. Tears welled softly, trickling quietly down my cheeks, not of sadness, but profound relief, as if something deep inside me had finally been released. I leaned back, inhaling deeply, savoring this fragile yet undeniable peace. Tomorrow would come, and with it perhaps new uncertainties, but tonight belonged wholly to me, to this quiet moment of truth. At last, after years of being invisible, I saw myself clearly, perhaps for the very first time. When I returned home after my week-long coastal retreat, stepping back into my apartment felt oddly surreal. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, yet I was profoundly different. Solitude had transformed me in subtle but undeniable ways. The Alina who left just a week earlier was not the same woman who now quietly unpacked her suitcase, savoring newfound peace. As I settled back into everyday life, I consciously kept my distance from my family, resisting the urge to immediately fall back into old patterns of communication. It wasn't easy. Every ignored phone call or unread text message from my mother made guilt press sharply against my chest. Yet each time I reminded myself gently, this distance is necessary for change. At first their messages were casual, as if testing the waters. "Alina, hope you're doing okay. Call when you get a chance," read a message from Mom. I ignored it, heart racing slightly with guilt. Then another from Lauren. "Hey, I need your advice about something." A vague, casual request meant to draw me back into my old role of problem solver. Again, I resisted. My silence must have unsettled them. The tone of their messages gradually shifted, reflecting a growing unease. After days of ignored attempts, a voicemail from my father shook me most deeply. His voice was unusually gentle, filled with uncertainty. "Alina, We miss you. Your mother's worried sick. Call us back when you can, okay? His vulnerability startled me. My father rarely showed emotion, particularly vulnerability. Still, despite my heart aching at their obvious distress, I knew reaching out prematurely would undo everything I'd achieved. 2 weeks passed in tense silence, each day reinforcing my resolve. I began to feel comfortable setting boundaries, even as a lingering sense of sadness remained. Until one afternoon, when an unexpected knock broke the silence. Opening my front door, I found my mother standing nervously in the hallway. She looked smaller somehow, older, worry etched visibly across her face. Her eyes met mine hesitantly, reflecting uncertainty I'd never seen before. "Mom," I said quietly, stepping aside. "Come in." She entered, carefully avoiding my eyes at first. After a moment of heavy silence, she finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. "I know you've been ignoring us," she began softly, "and I understand why." Surprised, I simply nodded, allowing her space. "You know," she continued haltingly, "it's strange. Your silence has shown me something important, something I should have seen clearly years ago." I sat down slowly, heart thumping unevenly, waiting. She inhaled deeply, voice low but steady. "We took you for granted, Alina. Always. Because you made it easy. You never complained, never demanded attention, always smoothed things over for everyone else. Until you stopped. And suddenly everything felt wrong." She paused, tears glistening gently in her eyes. "I'm ashamed it took your silence to see that clearly." Her raw honesty startled me deeply. My mother, always quick to defend or dismiss, had never spoken so openly before. Watching her struggle with genuine remorse stirred complicated emotions in my chest. I wanted to comfort her, yet knew it wasn't my responsibility this time. "I appreciate you saying this, Mom," I responded softly, my voice careful yet firm. "But understanding isn't the same as changing. I'm tired of promises without action." She nodded, understanding clearly. "I know words aren't enough, but please let me show you. Let us show you we can change." In the weeks that followed, subtle but meaningful shifts began to unfold within my family. My mother called regularly, not to complain or request help, but genuinely checking in on me. For the first time, she listened patiently as I spoke about myself, about my life, without redirecting the conversation back to her own needs. Dad, surprisingly, began sending simple yet thoughtful messages, small gestures previously unimaginable. "Just checking in. Love you, Alina." The simplicity and sincerity behind those words quietly healed old wounds, though scars remained. Even Lauren surprised me by sincerely acknowledging her selfishness during coffee one afternoon. Her voice was careful, hesitant, yet genuine. "I never realized how much I relied on you, Alina. Until you stopped being there, it forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths." Slowly, my family began demonstrating real, tangible change, not through grand gestures or empty promises, but quiet, consistent acts of genuine care. Still cautious, I allowed myself to gently reconnect, keeping healthy boundaries in place, always reminding myself, they must earn your trust back, one action at a time. One quiet evening, as I sat alone on my balcony, watching the stars emerge gently in the deepening twilight, my phone vibrated softly. I glanced down, seeing another message from my mother. "Just wanted to say goodnight. I'm grateful for you. Thank you for showing me who you really are and who I should have been all along." My throat tightened slightly, touched by her sincerity. The message wasn't an apology. It was something deeper, more meaningful, an acknowledgement of my worth, not just as a daughter, but as a person deserving respect. Holding the phone lightly, I finally replied simply, "Thanks, Mom. Good night." Sitting beneath the quiet stars, I felt a profound shift inside me, a warmth born from genuine healing rather than forced forgiveness. My family had finally started to understand, but more importantly, so had I. I realized then, vividly and peacefully, sometimes true love and respect emerge strongest from silence and absence, teaching us more about ourselves and each other than words ever could. Several weeks after my mother's surprising visit, she invited me for dinner at their home, a small but meaningful gesture that stirred equal parts anxiety and cautious hope within me. Although hesitant, I accepted, determined to approach this evening with clear boundaries, yet still open to the possibility of healing. Arriving at the house, a strange nervousness fluttered within my chest. The familiar porch light glowed warmly, and the scent of fresh pasta drifted softly from inside, comforting and nostalgic, yet slightly painful. Taking a deep breath, I knocked lightly, immediately greeted by my mother's gentle, tentative smile. "Come in, sweetheart," she said softly, stepping aside. Her voice, warmer now, carried genuine care rather than obligation. Entering the living room, I found my father standing quietly, a shy yet sincere smile on his usually guarded face. Lauren sat nearby, uncharacteristically quiet, eyes sincere as she met mine. "Hi, Alina," Dad offered quietly, voice cautious but genuine. I smiled slightly, taking a seat. "Hi, everyone." Dinner began quietly, but soon the conversation warmed gently safe topics at first, carefully chosen to avoid deeper wounds. Yet the tension beneath was palpable, an unspoken acknowledgement of the conversation we all knew was inevitable. Finally, after a pause, my father cleared his throat, meeting my eyes directly. "Alina Puon," he began, voice calm yet vulnerable. "We owe you more than a casual apology. We never truly understood, never saw how deeply we hurt you." My heart quickened slightly, but I held my silence, letting him speak. "We became so comfortable relying on your patience, your silence, your understanding," he continued, voice shaking slightly. "It was easier for us, not fair, just easier." Lauren's eyes softened beside him, her voice quiet as she added, "We got used to assuming you'd always forgive us, no matter what. That wasn't right." My mother nodded slowly, adding gently, "We've all talked about this, a lot actually, and we realize now genuinely how unfair we've been. You deserved better from us." Their honesty startled me deeply. My family rarely spoke so openly, especially regarding difficult truths. My throat tightened, yet I still hesitated, wary of falling back too easily into old patterns. "Thank you," I finally said softly, voice steady despite the emotion in my chest. "But I need you to understand something clearly. I'm not the same Alina who quietly absorbed your neglect. I can't be that person anymore." My father nodded immediately, seriousness evident in his eyes. "We know that now. That's why we invited you here. We're not expecting easy forgiveness, Alina. We're hoping to start rebuilding trust." Silence settled gently over the table, thoughtful rather than tense. Finally, Lauren looked up hesitantly. "It took losing your support to realize how much we took you for granted. I never understood how heavy that must have felt." Her sincerity reached something deep inside me, a small part of my guarded heart relaxing slightly. "It was heavy," I admitted softly. "But it was also partly my fault. I never demanded more for myself. I was afraid you wouldn't accept me otherwise." My mother leaned closer, voice soft but firm. "You don't have to prove your worth to us, Alina. We should have valued you simply because you're you." Her words struck gently, deeply, reaching hidden wounds I'd carried silently for years. Yet still, caution lingered within me. "This conversation is a good start," I finally said gently, looking carefully at each of them. "But I need more than words. I need your actions, small things, every day, respect, acknowledgement, real listening. If we're going to heal, that's the only way." My father smiled softly, relief clearly visible. "Then that's exactly what you'll have. It's time we show you clearly, not just say it." For the first time that evening, my heart fully relaxed. Hopeful, but still realistic. This conversation had opened doors long closed, yet I knew genuine change required time, consistency, and mutual effort. After dinner, as I stood quietly in the doorway preparing to leave, my mother approached gently, reaching softly for my hand. "Thank you for giving us another chance," she whispered, eyes glistening gently. "I promise we'll earn it." I squeezed her hand softly, sincerity filling my voice. "I know you will." Walking slowly toward my car beneath the gentle moonlight, I felt a quiet yet profound shift within me. The careful conversation tonight wasn't just a fresh start for my family. It was a fresh start for myself. Clear boundaries drawn not from anger, but genuine self-respect. Driving home, I felt lighter, clearer. The road ahead still felt uncertain, but now it glistened gently with quiet optimism. For the first time, I understood fully. Forgiveness wasn't simply about excusing past hurt. It was choosing consciously to allow healing and growth, both for others and for myself. And in that moment, alone yet deeply connected, I was finally ready to start that journey. In the weeks following that honest conversation, my life began to transform, not dramatically, but through quiet, consistent moments of genuine connection. It was subtle at first. A gentle shift felt more deeply than seen, yet gradually becoming clearer with each passing day. My parents kept their promise of demonstrating their commitment through actions rather than mere words. My mother's weekly calls, once full of casual complaints or passive demands, shifted into genuine curiosity about my well-being. She'd ask about my day, truly listen to my answers, and occasionally shared thoughtful stories from her own life. Not to overshadow, but to connect. Each conversation became less guarded, less strained, slowly easing the wounds we'd carried for years. Lauren, too, showed tangible change. One quiet Saturday afternoon, she invited me out for coffee, not to seek advice or vent, but simply to talk. Her presence was surprisingly calming, a departure from our past dynamic. "You know," she said hesitantly, stirring her latte, "since you stepped back, I've realized how much you were doing for all of us and how little we were doing for you." "It wasn't entirely your fault," I admitted gently, looking down into my cup. "I let it happen, Lauren. I thought my value came from what I could do for everyone else." She reached across the table, lightly touching my arm. "You never had to earn our love, Alina, even though we made you feel like you did." "I'm sorry." Her sincerity warmed me, further melting away the guardedness that still lingered between us. "Thanks, Lauren," I whispered softly. "I appreciate that." But perhaps the most unexpected moment of healing came from my father. One quiet evening, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening the door, I found him standing awkwardly in the hallway, holding a small box. "Hi, Dad," I said, startled. "Come in," and he entered cautiously, glancing around my apartment as if seeing it for the first time. After sitting silently for a moment, he pushed the small box toward me. "I found this," he began softly. "You might not even remember, but it meant something to me." Curiously, I opened the box, my breath catching softly at the sight of a small, worn, seashell one I'd given him when I was barely 10 years old during a rare family beach trip. "I've kept it on my desk all these years," he admitted quietly, voice uneven with emotion. "It always reminded me of you. Quiet but steady, overlooked yet incredibly strong. I'm sorry I never told you how proud of you I've always been." Tears burned softly in my eyes, unexpected but healing. This was my father, always reserved, rarely expressive, now opening up in a profoundly vulnerable way. This simple gesture touched deep, unspoken wounds. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered, voice trembling slightly. "This means more than you know." As time passed, the scars remained, but the pain slowly faded, replaced by newfound understanding. My family's actions began stitching together the wounds left by years of neglect, not erasing the past, but creating something stronger, more resilient in its place. Simultaneously, I continued nurturing my inner growth. I found solace in weekly conversations with Isabella, whose wisdom became invaluable. Her calm voice regularly reminded me of a simple yet profound truth. Healing is rarely linear. It's often slow, gentle, and filled with unexpected moments of grace. "You're becoming exactly who you always deserved to be," she told me one peaceful afternoon, sunlight streaming softly into her cozy calf. "Remember, true healing never means going back to how things were. It means moving forward into who you're truly meant to become." Her words lingered deeply within me, providing steady guidance along my path. I learned to set healthier boundaries, understood the beauty of genuine solitude, and embraced the courage to speak openly about my feelings. Healing became less of a goal and more of a quiet, ongoing journey, each small step bringing clarity, calm, and a deeper understanding of my own worth. One clear morning, sitting quietly on my balcony, coffee steaming softly beside me, I reflected gently on the transformation I'd undergone. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, yet it was profoundly real. I was no longer defined by how much I could silently endure. Instead, I'd become someone who understood deeply that I was worthy of respect, worthy of love, not because of how much I could sacrifice, but simply because of who I was. Smiling softly to myself, I realized something beautifully simple yet powerful. Healing isn't about erasing past hurt. It's about acknowledging it, growing from it, and finding peace not despite, but because of it. In that gentle morning glow, I understood clearly that my journey wasn't finished. But for the first time, I felt utterly at peace with where I was heading. Months passed, bringing gentle, transformative moments that solidified my newfound sense of self. Each day, I felt stronger, lighter, more genuinely myself. The relationship with my family gradually found a new equilibrium, not perfect, yet healthier, built on mutual respect, rather than quiet endurance. One bright spring morning, exactly a year after the painful text that had started it all, I found myself standing once again by the ocean, the very place where my solitude had first taught me the courage to embrace myself fully. It felt fitting to return here, a symbolic gesture marking my personal rebirth. Barefoot, I walked quietly toward the shoreline, gentle waves lapping around my ankles, the salty breeze kissing my cheeks. This place, once representing loneliness, now felt like sacred ground where I had first discovered my strength, my voice, and ultimately, my freedom. As I stood there, gazing quietly toward the horizon, I reflected deeply on how far I'd come. The Alina from a year ago, fearful and desperate for validation, now felt like a distant memory, replaced by someone wiser, gentler, yet fiercely protective of her boundaries and worth. My quiet reverie was softly interrupted by a gentle buzz, my phone vibrating quietly in my pocket. Pulling it out, I saw a group text notification. "Hi Alina, we just wanted you to know we're thinking about you today. We're proud of who you've become and grateful for everything you've taught us. Love, Mom, Dad, Lauren, and Alex." Warmth bloomed gently within my chest. Not only had I changed, but my family had genuinely transformed alongside me. They'd learned, slowly but authentically, to see me clearly, respect me openly, and acknowledge their past mistakes sincerely. Smiling softly, I replied simply, "Thank you, I love you all too." Slipping the phone back into my pocket, I felt an overwhelming yet peaceful sense of closure. This chapter of my life hadn't been easy. It had demanded honesty, vulnerability, courage, and countless uncomfortable conversations. Yet every painful step had led me precisely to this moment, standing quietly at the edge of the ocean, finally free. I inhaled deeply, savoring this clarity, this quiet sense of completeness. True rebirth wasn't dramatic or flashy. It was gentle, subtle, rooted deeply in self-respect and quiet confidence. It came from recognizing that my worth had always existed within, independent of anyone's approval or acceptance. Later that evening, sitting alone beneath a softly painted sunset, I pulled out the small seashell my father had given me, now a cherished symbol of quiet strength. Holding it carefully in my palm, I whispered softly into the gentle evening breeze, mostly to myself, "Thank you for showing me who I needed to become." It was a quiet acknowledgement of my past pain, of my family's mistakes, and of my hard-won strength. As the sun dipped gracefully beneath the horizon, painting the sky with quiet brilliance, I understood fully and completely. My life was no longer defined by silence and sacrifice. Instead, it had become a gentle yet powerful testament to genuine self-love, respect, and personal freedom. I was truly reborn, not as someone entirely new, but as who I was always meant to be. Free, strong, and deeply, quietly myself.